that child save us all? If he's sentenced to die, tell me, Nikolaos. Tell me before you let our son go.
Where we begin does not define who we will become. Before you, I see a path. Built by friendship and family, love and loss, war and bloodshed.
You were sent by the gods to protect this world.
You carry the blade of Leonidas. Act like it. As you write your Odyssey across the mountains and the seas, remember, the fate of Greece journeys with you.
Hi everyone, and welcome to our talk on texturing the world of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. My name is Pierre Flo. I'm a technical texture artist at Ubisoft Quebec. And I've been working in the video game industry for the last 15 years. And on the project, I had two main responsibilities. The first one was to help implement a new texturing workflow. And the second one was to help texturing in production on different mandates.
Hi, my name is Vincent Desrosiers. I'm an environment artist specialized in material creation. I've been working in the game industry for almost a decade now. On this project, I was helping Pierre to create that workflow, teaching outsourcing team, and also during the production, I was making the follow-up for all the material about architectural mandates and creating texture as well. So today we are really excited to share with you some insight about the production of Assassin's Creed Odyssey from a material point of view. We are going to share with you those insights from conception, pre-production, and then production. So when we start the project, we have three different mandates. The first one was to support the art direction by finding and creating our own visual identity. We also had to modernize the pipeline by finding and creating new tools. And finally, we had to improve mandate coherency between several teams like biomes, architecture, and props. So we start that journey by asking ourselves what makes Assassin's Creed what it is, visually and technically. Visually, it's a realistic game. And technically, every tool we add in-house at Ubisoft are very robust and efficient and are here to help the team. So we had to find our own place without breaking that heritage. We also took a look to everything and a lot of very inspiring games made by a lot of amazing studios. And we were very thrilled and excited by the level of stylization they have in their games, how they were very clever about it, and also about all the technical knowledge and tools they put in place in terms of material creation. So about the conception phase, with that in mind, that phase was a phase where we solved a lot of challenges. The first one was about the size of the project and how we had to keep that in mind when we build the pipeline and all the data we have to do. and also how to create an aesthetical idealization that will fit the artistic direction of the project. So the size of the project first, the project was huge, and so was all the team involved inside Ubisoft. It means that in terms of communication, it's going to be a challenge in itself to work on that project. But from a material point of view, it means that the pipeline and the workflow we have to create and to put in place had to be very robust and versatile. From the artistic direction point of view, at the beginning of the project, the art director told us that he wanted the game to be colorful, contrasted, and epic. So, keeping that in mind and the fact that Assassin's Creed is a realistic game, but still that for us, readability and aesthetic are very important, we start to realize that at a certain level we are going to stylize some shape. So because that word doesn't mean the same thing for everyone, stylization, we start to build the same vocabulary for everyone involved in every team, starting with a classical concept, like this kind of thing you can see on those amazing Edward Hopper paintings here. Composition, lighting, shape language, or even the color palette are used and put to good use to create something very specific in terms of storytelling, but still everything here is pretty grounded. This kind of artistic leverages has been used for more than a century now in the cinema, and they are pretty interesting for us because this kind of movies, they are realistic, they are grounded, and still there is a lot of artistry in it. And it was exactly what we were going to go for the project. It also applied to references, simply. If you are going to create something very artistry with some kind of idealization in it, you are going to choose your ref carefully. You are going to choose the ref that is giving the storytelling you want to give in that scene or in that specific environment or scene. Of course, you can also apply this kind of idealization or reference choosing to every aspect of the project. So also for the characters, for the props, for the shot itself, for the lighting. And we learn a lot of things from movies, but also for TV series, for example. On this very exciting background from the series Rome, you can see that here you can spot directly that that thing is a TV series production set, because shapes are a bit bigger. You can see that there is some part missing and all, but still the patina and all are feeling very grounded, and still the final output is credible. And that was exactly what we were going to focus on during the production. We call all of those artistic leverages aesthetical idealization, meaning that, like in painting and in movies, video games can really use aesthetical leverages to create something much more appealing and interesting without breaking the credibility of the image. And it also applies to material like Pierre is going to show you.
After thinking about the art direction of the direction we wanted to go, we started to think about how to translate this art direction into really texture work and extract the good words and the good way of working we wanted to communicate with the team. And the first one we found really quickly was at first to always have a very strong color palette and to have like a very primary color present in all of our texture work. So like you can see in this example, you have very strong present color and some secondary that are too very, very present. We tried also to have albedo texture that is always very contrasted and saturated, just to have something very living, interesting, and to put some very interesting details a place to see. After that, we think about the volume, and we wanted to exaggerate and simplify the shape, just to have something, give some space for the details we want to see, and give more life, and like that tell more story about our texture work. Like on this ceramic floor, you can see the cracks are very big, but they are telling stories much more easily. And when the player is playing the game, it's much more evident for us. We try to exaggerate the shape, like you have here, the size of the character. It's really much more bigger than the one we have, but with the camera and when you are playing the game, it's much more readable and easy for the player to see the detail we wanted to put inside of the texture. We try to do a breakdown of the shape just for everyone to be really clear about what we want to go. So at first we created this example of a simple stone wall, and at first we always try to work on what we call the big shape. It's simply the pattern of the texture. And after that, we will try to add what we call the medium shapes. The medium shapes are just the interesting details that are telling stories about the texture. So it's really the biggest part we will work the most on the texture. And after that, we add the small details that are here just to give credibility in your texture material and to help it to be more grounded, like porosity, or really the small details to help to finish the material. So every time it's a good balance you need to find when creating a texture. And the next one that was really, really important for us was trying to avoid having too much noise in the color, but for the shape, volume too, and the glossiness, it was more like a general rule. And like that, we wanted to have some really clear material and to be really, not to have too much noise on the screen and just to read the texture very easily. And the last one that was very important for us was to try to have some glossiness really interesting and feel like living, like grounded into the world. So we try to have really visible glossiness on all of our material, even on matte surface like wood or stone. We try to always have some good contrast. So it was really the big pillar what we put in place. I put some example just for comparison between real life and how we translated this art direction into our texture work. So you can really see the 6 pillar of the art direction we put in place. The shapes are much bigger, the colors are very strong and present inside of the texture work. And we tried to give more space to the medium details to have something really interesting. So at the end, we extracted those 6 pillars and we communicate with everyone on the project just to be sure that everyone was on the same page and we are going in the good direction. So here you have some example in game where we can see really clearly that we finally had a lot of contrast and variation. And after that, we were ready to go to the next production phase. So we moved to the pre-production phase, where we started to work on our second objective, that was to improve the texturing workflow and to find new tools to go forward. So at first, we moved to other Ubisoft studio just to see what other teams already made using Substance. So we visited different projects and they shared with us a lot of insight and experience of what they did, and we learned a lot in the process. So like that we had a good base when started implementing the new tools. And at the same time we wanted to keep texturing workflow very simple and very efficient, because Assassin's Creed is a game that's going on for many years and the texturing workflow was very solid. At the first, it was using Photoshop as a main bridge, and it was very easy because you work your texture inside of Photoshop, you save it, and when saving, the texture is automatically imported into the engine. So it was very straightforward and very easy for everyone. So we didn't want to break that. So to do that, we just connected Substance in front of the legacy bridge. So like that, we are just exporting a PSD file from Substance, and the PSD file was automatically imported into Anvil. That was the simple way for us to do that. And at the same time, it gave us an opportunity for the person that was not an artist in the studio, like a technical director or other people that wanted to make some tests on the texture, to be able to open the PSD files and do the test on their own without having Substance on their computer. So finally, it was a very good choice for us. And after that, we wanted to convey everyone in the team that Substance was the good tool to go. So we started to make some first tests, just create some Substance of different kinds of material, and import them into the engine. So it was the very, very basic material, but just to be sure that we can match the same quality. And at the same time, we tried to showcase the most important feature of Substance. So like to be able to change in a few seconds the number of bricks in your texture. That was very important for us. And like to be able to change the seed and regenerate the texture on the fly very, very quickly and create iteration. Or just to be able to use a SVG file and change the pattern and the texture regenerates on its own very, very quickly. So all those features finally help us to convey the people on the project that it was a good tools to go. But to be sure, they ask us if it's possible to retake some assets from Assassin's Creed Origins and just recreate the same architecture module using Substance only. So we did the test, and the test just conveyed us that it was a good way to go. And after decided that we want to move using only Substance on the project, we decided to add more tools to be sure to have more consistency. So we decided to implement a material bank that we created only in Substance Designer. So it was 150 materials only created in Designer, and it was all made to meet our needs in terms of art direction and technicity. So we made it based on the request of the different teams, like for architecture, props. And so at first we're creating a base of this bank that was maybe 80 materials, and the production going forward, we just added more and more material. And in this bank, you can find all the material present on the houses, on the props, the one you can find on the temples with a different kind of marble you can find in ancient Greece, and all the kind of metal like copper and brass. And so it was really useful for us because like that, artists can share the same base of work, and it was really efficient for that. After that, we wanted to have artists feel very confident about their work because the way of working was different. So we added some automatic tools to help them check if technically their work was fine. And like that, you can just check in engine or in Substance if your PBR workflow was correct. It was more for the extreme value, like too dark or too light. Or if you have some extreme value of glossiness, you can check it with some post-effect really quickly. So this one was a version available inside of Substance Designer. And we have another one available in Painter. So this one, you just put the tool on top of your layer stack, and you can check really quickly, like you can see in red, this area is wrong. You can just fix it, and after you export it. And it's very quick and efficient. We also added some custom shader inside of Substance because we wanted to have nearly the same lighting situation in Substance compared to what we have in the game. And we had some HDR capture of the game to have different lighting situation. Like if you wanted to have daytime or nighttime or interior lighting, we added a lot of different HDR map for that. Another interesting part, I took some time to talk with the artist that was working on the game for many years before, just to try to identify their way of working, because I was thinking if they come to the project and I can help them create some simple tools, maybe they will feel more at home and more easy to switch to the new way of working. So finally, it helped us a lot to create some very simple tools just to help everyone have their own little workflow to make it more fluid Like this one was just to create some mask very quickly and tweak the color, the glossiness on the fly. And the last part, we did a lot of documentation. So we did some technical documentation, some SBS example inside of Designer, but some PowerPoint, some videos to share about the art direction, or just to use how to use the workflow basically. And we shared that with all of the team internally and externally. After that, Vincent will show you the first example of props of the game we made.
To finish properly the pre-production, we took a practical example, the first houses we identified with the historian we have in the studio, art director, and everyone involved in that process. So those were the Greek houses, the average one. So we just did those in 3D, keeping in mind all the different artistic leverages we talked about at the beginning of the presentation, and also to validate for us the complete technical process as well. So we start by layering material and trying to break up things into something simple to use in Substance Designer. So we finish with those houses that were for us not completely final and polished, but very good to go. So for us that was a very good proof of concept of the whole workflow, and we were good to start the real production. So those same houses, the final one in the game, so you can see that there is a polish phase on it, and there is still something that changed because we learned a lot during the production as well, but they're pretty much the same. So we can move to the production phase, where we mostly design, identify all of our needs, of course, before starting to produce something, apply a new workflow, and we will show you a lot of examples. So what we made first on every mandate, that could be biomes, architecture pieces, or props, every time we design everything first. Here you have a very great example for all the biomes we have in the game. So you can see the full range of the biomes we want. That was very cool for us to do it like that in 2D, to be able to iterate on it very fast and to be sure that we have all the same vision, artistically speaking. The same goes for the props. So before going to production for any asset, we did a pass like that. And the same goes for the architectural pieces. And what we made also is a phase we call the identification phase. We don't go just with the concept art into production. We start to break things, all the things we just identified and validate in 2D, into little breakups like those one. And we also check the memory budget we have. The idea is to avoid to produce anything or design anything we will not have in the game. That way, everything that we design is in the game at the end. So here you have some great example from the team about how to break down things on those houses. So you can see that in the top corner you have all the texture we are supposed to produce to have those recipes. Here another example where you even have a list of all the multi-material you are going to use at the end on the modular pieces. So again, it is just to be sure that we are okay in terms of memory budget, but also time budget to produce everything. And now comes the real new things about the project and the kind of little revolution we have on the pipeline, about the workflow. That was that to be very efficient and to simplify things for everyone, we used the best thing of every software for each step. For the sculpt, we use Substance Designer, and then for the layering, we use Substance Painter. That way, we just use the best software for the best it has to offer for us during the production, and at the end, it creates the final material. That way, we can still, that was a non-destructive process, we can still update the sculpt anytime, just go back inside Painter and update at the same time the layering, but everything was very clear and very efficient. Here you have some example of the material we create for example, for the Doric temples. So everything you have at the bottom of the image was made using that specific workflow, sculpting the shapes first inside Designer, and then layering material from the bank Pierre talked about inside Painter. What was cool about that workflow also was that inside Painter, the layering process and the sculpt, because you just load your sculpt, it's not directly connected, so you can just like encapsulate in a group all your material layering and just share it through the whole or on another scene. So here, the mortar you have are all the recipes, the smart mat for the rocks or for the stucco. You can just reuse it on another part or on another material of that kit. So at the end, we just win a lot of time and at the same time improve the coherency inside that kit, for example, and that was very, very efficient for us. So I can show you a very specific example. That one is a simple one. It's a trim for the Mycenaean tombs we did. This one is very interesting because there is a lot of different material for the layering. So as I said, we start the sculpt inside Substance Designer, starting like Pierre said with the big shapes, sculpting the medium ones, refining the sculpt and adding some different elements done in subgraphs. So that way we can just keep everything very clean, very efficient, and change anything at any time. So here it's a little illustration of that process in Designer. The video is speed up. And then when you just finish your sculpt and you're happy with it, you just don't go inside the engine. What you do is that you export some texture strata to go inside Painter. So you export your 8 map, normal, basically all the masks you are going to need inside Painter, even some ID map, for example. Then inside Painter, you create a new project, and from a blank material, you start by layering the material bank we have, or create new material for that specific needs. And we just try to mimic the kind of patina you have, the material layering you have in the reality, keeping in mind the artistic leverages and pilar we identified at the beginning of the project. At the end, it creates something grounded, efficient for us, but also very easy to update. So again, a little video to illustrate it. Here I'm just unhiding the different group, but you have the ID. Everything is like layered from bottom to top, trying to mimic what you can have in terms of patina in the reality. Everything is really broken down into different material to go very fast and to keep the patina depending on the material you are working on. You can also see the material bank we have in-house here. And then you just export it in the engine. So when you export, here is a little sneak peek how we just export the texture inside the Anvil. We just create 2 textures, one RGB and with the 8 map inside the alpha, and another one with the normal metallic and glossiness. Now, inside Anvil, we just use those textures we create to create material using blend shader to blend those with generic textures or other one specific one, like the destruction one you can see on the left. And here's the result on the other part of an architectural element. We rely a lot on blend shaders because we are an open world. We have to be smart about it. So we didn't have the memory budget or the time budget to create specific texture for like everything. We just reserve that for hero asset. So some example of those blending on the final asset. You also have some decal here and there. And another tool we created during the production that was very valuable for us was a gym we called the PBR showroom. That was a place where everyone was sharing his material live. Every time you were like working on props, architectural element or kits, you were just supposed to put all your material in it to send a mail to say to everyone, hey, I put something new. That way, everyone was aware that something new was here. That was very efficient for a lot of reasons for us. For me, that was very cool, and Pierre as well, to keep track on things, to be able to check, okay, what is supposed to be in that kit, that specific kit, those residential, is available or not. Is it okay in terms of technically, is it okay in terms of memory budget, or artistically, is it fitting for everything? So that was very efficient for that. But that was also a place where we were sharing our material with the 3D modelers. We were not just making material for fun, we were making those for the final asset in the game. So every time we made material, every time we create some kind of recipes in the form of a 3D object. So that was all the time, as you can see, a very simple one, but that was just to share with the modelers, okay, that material was designed for that. Again, the modeling here is pretty simple, but you get the idea that those trim, they were made at first for grounds. Of course, you can reuse those for something else, but that was the idea behind that material. Because the material we worked on, we like to call them recipes, so meaning that we made those for specific context.
And at the same time, working on this workflow like designer and after that painter, we quickly saw that we wanted to keep everything very open. And sometimes in different case and different texture, it was not necessary to always follow the same pipeline, the same workflow. So we decided to make some changes depending on the needs. Like for example, for the fresco, we had some really great concept art made by the concept team. So we simply took them and import them inside of Substance Painter as an ID map and use it directly to layer the different materials. It was very quick and very efficient and the most easy way to create those textures. So we made a lot of different fresco in the game. You can see on different buildings like the Wood Public Building or the temples, you can see a lot of variation. This one, for the mosaic, it was like very straightforward. So we created SVG vectorial file inside of Substance Designer and did all of the sculpt inside of Substance and finally did the layering inside of Substance Painter. So this one was more classic, but to use the SVG file really helped us to create the mosaic very complex and very easily. So it was a very big win for us. So you can have a lot of different mosaic inside of the rich house or the temples. We have really a lot of different variation and we created them really relatively quickly. But for the biome, for example, it was more natural for the person who worked on it to create everything from scratch in Designer because you have a lot of small organic plants and you want to create a lot of unique details. So sometimes for this specific case, it was much more efficient to create everything inside of Substance Designer. And because we wanted to do some height blending directly into Substance and to mix a lot of surfaces, it was much more easy for him to do that. We also had some other artists that was very comfortable using ZBrush, so we thought it was a very cool idea to just let everyone choose what they want to work with. So he was creating all of his texture inside of ZBrush and export and bake everything inside of Substance Painter directly. So it was really the best workflow for him. So we just continue like that too. And here you have an example. We use this texture as a decal on boats. And we had some much more complicated example like this one. Like those big atlas of texture was made for the wood temples. And because you want a lot of details, sometimes it could be take too much time to create this inside of Substance Designer. So we made the first pass inside of 3ds Max. We also added some sculpt inside of it because we needed to have this inside. And after that, we went into Substance Designer, added some damage, added some other detail. I also retook 2 other statues that I included and baked inside of this texture. So it was really efficient to just choose the good software you want at the good step, just to be very efficient and very quick in the work, to have a lot of time for iteration. And here you have a close-up of this texture, like used nearly on every asset you have on the screen. It was for the wood temples. We also have another interesting use of substance, like because the game is an open world, is very big, so we need to create assets that are very efficient. So we used a lot of texture using alpha tests to fake some volume. So we used that for windows, for fences, or for different balconies. And using Substance was very efficient because creating those kind of volume is very quick. And we are creating all of those details inside of Substance Designer, like for the grid and for the fence, for the temple too. Here you have an example of the texture on the left that was created at first in Designer and finished in Substance Painter. And on the right you have the final architecture module. We also created some small atlas texture for the little metal pieces to connect different elements. And we also created some damage decal for the wood. So it was very interesting. We found a lot of different utilization of this method, so we used it a lot in the game. Finally, as a conclusion, I think we learned a lot during this project about how to implement new software. And also the team learned a lot about communication and how to share and how to do work on a very big scale of projects, but implementing new solution and changing the workflow. It was really interesting and different.
Yeah, I do think that at the end we definitely find our own visual identity, and we also like improve our workflow and improve the mandate coherency, and also help everyone in a team to grow like a lot artistically. So that was an amazing project for all of us. So thanks for being here, and if you have any question, now is the time. Yeah.
How did you handle software updates with so many applications in your pipeline?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
How did you handle software updates with so many applications in your pipeline?
You ask how we found it, or
How you handled them?
ah?
So like algorithmic updates every couple of months, and then making sure that your workflow is robust and not breaking.
At some point during the production, at the beginning, every time we could, at the beginning during the pre-production, mostly in production, we update every time a major release was done with, new nodes, new tools. But at some point, we have just to stop to keep everything stable. But that was working for us.
Yeah.
Do you remember which versions you shipped with for Painter and Designer?
We did most of the production with the version 6. So it was 6.0.3, I think.
Yeah, it's an old one.
Yeah, it's an old version.
We are old guys.
Hey guys, great
Hi.
talk. Thanks for coming out.
Thanks.
With the material bank, how did you handle textile density? Given that I assume it was used across different sizes of assets.
For textile density on this project, we added to a post-effect view to be able to check that with color you can see if you have the good textile ratio or not. But basically it was more like sharing like documentation with the team and show that everyone was on the same page for that. But we added some tools too for that to be sure that everything was fine.
Awesome, thanks.
How big was the team across offices? Just the materials team?
Combien de gens pour créer tous les matériaux?
At the beginning of the project, we were 3. At the maximum of the ramp up, we were 10. And at the end, to close the project, we were 3 again. So let's say 10. Yeah, that was basically it.
Okay. And this was counting all the offices in Kiev?
That was what?
This is counting all the offices that you work with?
Sorry, I didn't hear it.
I was wondering whether this is counting all the offices that you worked with in Shanghai and Kiev.
That everything was made inside Ubisoft, like what you saw at the beginning. Half of the team was in Quebec, the other half was in Shanghai, in our studio from Shanghai. So at the beginning of the production, just at the end of the pre-production, when we had our artistic direction and how technically we wanted to like put it in use, we just go there, basically share the process and the best practices, and we just split some mandates. So we did a little bit more than half of it for the architectural mandate, for example, and they did the rest. And at the end, everything is the same quality, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and then I think 2 or 3 artists in Shanghai.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just curious, kind of theoretical question. On the next project, if you had access to the substance parameters in your engine, do you think you would work that way, or would you stick with the Photoshop bridge method?
For the moment, I don't know, because for this project, it works like that. It depends on the need and what we will do for the future. So
it also depends on the performance you have. The SBSR, they are cool, but if you can use them live or like expose parameters, because they have a cost in terms of millisecond. So it really depends on what you can use in your game.
Okay. Did you guys find that you were kind of looking for that at times during this, or?
We look at it at the beginning, but we wanted at the end. We found that because of the scale of the project, it was much more easier for us to have like more restricting materials, and we wanted to be sure that in terms of art direction, everything was not going in all ways. So,
yeah.
But maybe on different projects, it could be interesting. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you have any other cool little tools that you could share with us, like that PBR consistency check color ramp? Because that was really cool.
A lot.
No, but we have the textile density that was nice to like go in the PBR showroom and just check in 1 second every aspect of the different materials. So this one was really nice. But most of the other tool was like tools inside of Substance. So we used a lot a tool to convert your normal layer stack in mask. This one was very useful when you have a base normal map, but you are layering a lot of different material on top, and you want to create mask from that. So this one was really useful too.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks.
Hi guys, great talk. I had a question about the way you create assets versus creating an asset with tilables. So normally companies make assets in a traditional sense, like you sculpt like a column shaft and you create a kit of it. And like, for example, the column pillars, you create them as a kit of shafts. And then so for Odyssey, you guys created the columns in a tileable sense, and you just wrapped the tileable texture around it, right? So how do you come across making that decision for the team?
I would say it's a classical way or a normal way to do asset like that. I mean, in terms of how to bring down material when you don't have that much memory budget for everything. Like what you saw in Spider-Man on the Insomniac presentation, you saw that they use like a lot of trim as well to do big environment like that. It is just that if you just try to do a building, for example, a big building with a lot of floors, and you just bake everything, at the end, all your memory budget is just in one building. So if you want to create or recreate the ancient Greece, you have to be like smart about your budget. So you have to find this kind of, I would say, classical way to do environment. I think even in big games like Uncharted and Tomb Raider, they are using this kind of dispatch material that are pretty classical, but you can keep, it's also time consuming at some point if you're like creating specific material for everything. So we keep those for example, when you have a column, we keep tiling material for every part except maybe the Corinthian capital. This kind of thing can have its own texture, but for the rest, we try to keep everything like tiling and all that was much more efficient for us.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks.
One more last question. When you have seen Substance Alchemy this morning, how you would use it in production for those kind of game?
You mean for the next?
Yeah, you have 150 materials in your material bank. Would it use blending it in Substance Alchemist, for instance?
It could be interesting to create variation very quickly, maybe. I think if we can just, like the feature to change the different color based on different image or those kind of feature could be cool to test or to try for that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Any more questions? No? Okay. So, thanks you all for coming, and if you want to learn more about Assassin's Creed Odyssey, there is a great talk from Ben Hall and Thierry Dansereau next Thursday. And if you want even more, you can come at our booth and say hello, because we are hiring. Thanks you for...